For 30 years, Johnny Carson invited America's biggest stars to sit under the warm glow of The Tonight Show lights. On camera, he was the perfect host. Gracious, quick, always in control. But off camera, according to people who worked closest to him, Carson had a brutally simple way to read someone's character. Watch how they treated the people who couldn't help their career. Tonight, we're opening the quiet ledger of guests he reportedly disliked the most and what those moments reveal about Hollywood's golden age. This isn't tabloid shock. Carson didn't make a habit of feuds, and he rarely banned anyone outright. But crew members, producers, and later biographers recall patterns he couldn't ignore. He tolerated nerves, odd habits, even oversized egos. What crossed the line, he believed, was cruelty. With that lens in mind, let's look at 7 names that kept coming up in private conversations. Always remembering the key words: reportedly and allegedly. Here's the more perfect the image, the more fragile it often is behind the door. On television, Joan Crawford embodied regal polish, precise posture, flawless makeup, every syllable shaped like a gem. Backstage, according to former Tonight Show staffers, the demands could be exacting. Lighting notes down to angles and color temperature, the chair height, even the studio's air set to a specific number. None of that shocked a crew used to stars. What did linger in memory were the moments when someone young or powerless made a small mistake. Several accounts describe a dressing room outburst at a production assistant that reduced the room to silence. And then, red light on, smile perfectly restored, answers landing like rehearsed beats. Carson respected discipline. He respected old-school professionalism. But he struggled, reportedly, with what felt like a performance of warmth that evaporated the instant the camera blinked off. If Crawford was control through polish, the next name was control by gravity, charisma, surrounded by a weather system. When the entourage walks in first, the temperature changes. Frank Sinatra could light up the stage with a story or a song. He also, according to longtime crew, traveled with men who weren't show business types, and their presence changed the air in the studio. Staff recall tense tapings, late cancellations, and a brusque moment with a floor manager who offered the standard time cue. Some who were there say Carson nearly pulled a segment once, not because he disliked Sinatra's talent, but because of how people were treated when power entered the room. On camera, Carson kept it cool. Off camera, he reportedly asked to limit future appearances. Not a ban, just guardrails, a quiet line in the sand. From gravity to sheer force of personality, one that didn't always fit inside a 7-minute segment. Brilliance dazzles. Time clocks do not. Orson Welles could turn a simple prompt into a 20-minute tale. Viewers loved it. But Tonight Show producers remember him crossing out prepared topics, redirecting cameras mid-conversation, and stretching segments far past their marks. Carson admired excellence, but he was a craftsman of television timing. The cues, the breaks, the rhythm that kept the whole machine humming. Reports say Welles sometimes treated those boundaries as optional. Carson wasn't offended by the mind. He was frustrated by the disregard for the medium that employed hundreds of people working to the minute. Some guests broke format. Others broke conversations by turning them into cross-examinations. A conversation needs oxygen. Cross-examination takes it away. Bette Davis was magnetic, razor-sharp, and fiercely alive on the couch. She also, according to staff recollections, could dominate a set so completely that younger guests vanished in her wake. Interruptions, cut-ins, a posture that said courtroom rather than parlor. Carson, who hated humiliating anyone, reportedly stepped in once when a crew member became the target of sharp criticism. After that, he kept the on-air dance cordial but careful. He admired legends. He just didn't want a sparring match when the job was to make everyone shine. And then, there were the appearances that felt unpredictable, not because of wit, but because boundaries blurred. Nostalgia can't excuse behavior, it only complicates it. Mickey Rooney connected the room to Hollywood's earliest roar. But several crew accounts say his energy sometimes tipped into chaos, stories that veered, jokes that landed in the wrong decade, and, at times, behavior around young staffers that made people uncomfortable. Some appearances felt loosened by alcohol. Others simply felt out of time. Carson wasn't a scold. Far from it. But he drew bright lines around professionalism. When those lines smudged, he adjusted. Fewer late-night bookings, more daytime pre-tapes, careful traffic cop hosting to keep the segment safe and moving. If Rooney tested boundaries by impulse, the next guest tested them by design, through a blizzard of requirements that rippled through the entire building. One person's preferences can become 100 people's problem. Zsa Zsa Gabor was television gold. Glamour, mischief, a wink that played beautifully in close-up. She also, according to coordinators who juggled her arrivals, brought a list: dressing room temperature, specific flowers, brand-specific cosmetics, custom lighting, and no younger rival starlets on the same night. None of these, alone, was shocking in the era. Together, they could scramble a tightly timed production. Carson joked about it later, crew say, but the joke hit a truth. Tonight was a clockwork show. When a single guest's orbit bent the entire schedule, he felt it not just as a host, but as the person responsible for the whole crew getting home on time. Demands strained logistics, dominance strains conversations. And then there was the guest, whose on-air hijinks and off-air demeanor clashed hardest with Carson's private code. Public halos cast the darkest private shadows when they don't match. Jerry Lewis was an empire. Comedian, filmmaker, tireless fundraiser. He also, according to multiple staff memories, could treat crews with open impatience, talking over the host, commandeering bits meant for others, addressing seasoned professionals as, "Hey, you," and making a performance out of superiority. Carson disliked one thing above almost all others: people touching him uninvited. One story has Lewis adjusting Johnny's tie mid-show. Another has him exploding at a cameraman for a minor distraction. Whether or not every detail is perfect after decades, the through line is clear in the recollections. Carson's respect for the craft and the people who made it possible was non-negotiable. When guests violated that, the door didn't exactly slam, but it did quietly stop swinging open. So, what do these stories add up to? Not a villain gallery, not a purity test, but something simpler and more useful. Carson's private judgments, as remembered by colleagues and reported in biographies, weren't thunderbolts hurled from a throne. They were a working man's notes from the busiest hallway in show business. He admired genius and understood nerves. He could live with egos. What he couldn't live with was contempt. For the stagehands, the assistants, the makeup teams, the people with headsets who made the red light blink on time. That was his quiet test. And in a pre-smartphone era, when reputations could be curated by studios and protected by silence, his vantage point was unusually honest. Every star came through his doorway. Every mask had to slip eventually, if only between commercials. Maybe that's the real lesson of Johnny Carson's Blacklist. The camera adds more than 10 pounds. It adds a layer of fiction. The best hosts, Carson chief among them, could see past the layer. They made great television out front, and then, after the applause, they remembered who deserved respect when no one was watching. In Hollywood, that might be the only metric that still holds up. If this look behind the curtain gave you new insight into legends you thought you already knew, please hit like and subscribe now. We're digging into more rooms where image and reality quietly collided. And next time, we're moving into a new chapter where, according to those who were there, the sweetest on-screen persona wasn't so sweet when the cameras cut. Don't miss it.